Good morning.
Good morning. Good
How,
morning, everyone. I see a few return visitors from last week's training. I'm so glad you guys are back. We're here again this week with Karen King, our everyone's favorite behavioral consultant. I'm sure some of you have seen Karen's trainings before at our summit and many others across the state. So I don't want to take any of her time. Today we're going to be talking about student noncompliance, and I'm going to turn it right over to Karen.
yes, thank you so much. Yes, we don't have much time as we learn next week with it being an hour versus an hour and a half-ish typically. So we will go ahead and get started. In the chat book is the link to a resource folder. The PowerPoint's in there. Just for reference, I need to go in and change a couple of slides, but for the majority, it is the same thing. So feel free. I just need to change my email in there, I believe, and maybe the link in that one because it's a PDF, but I'll give you the link in the chat, the current one, because I added a couple of different resources. So you're here today for student noncompliance, and I was mentioning earlier this morning that I may need to really take some of this stuff in. Done it for 30-something years. I love noncompliance. However, as I told you last week, I have a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old. And right now they are pushing my buttons. And I am in a power struggle with the 16-year-old, and I recognize that. So we'll talk about that as we go through. And just to say up front, when we're talking about noncompliance, this can be all the way from a toddler, from a baby, all the way up into adults. So I want you to just think about somebody who's been pushing your buttons. Maybe you've been in a power struggle with them, and just either write an initial down, write it down, and just kind of so you can start thinking about what can I do differently, or why are they acting the way they are? All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, I'm Karen King, and there's my email. I will update those, that PowerPoint as soon as we get off, so you'll have my new email address. If you need to use your phone, you can just bring it up to the camera and get the QR code here and have it on your phone, or it will also be in the chat for the link. Today's learning objectives in our quick hour together is just to define student noncompliance, identify what does that look like, what's the continuum of that, identify at least 3 interventions for teaching noncompliant students, what we can do, and also what's the function? Why are they doing what they're doing? And we started talking about that a little bit last week. Do you keep control, or do you lose control when you begin to come up with a power struggle or in an argument? And a lot of times as teachers, we typically like to have control. We like our classroom to be in control. We like to be in control of things. So knowing what type of personality we have, and also recognizing when we're able to not lose control and keep control over our emotions. We're going to watch a quick video here.
Child swears at me. That's kind of the event that I'm dealing with. Child tells me where to go, what route to take my mother with me, and where I can pack my lunch. Okay. That is a blatant kind of disrespect towards me. What is my automatic thought about that child? Come on. My automatic thought, yes? Yeah, the kids are really, what a poop. All right. I could think of some better things. All right. All right. He swears at me, and my automatic thought is, wow, this child is a bad person. All right? A bad person because they swore at me. That's my automatic thought. Because in my mind, folks, our automatic thought is always driven by the way we were raised, the way we were taught, the way we got our needs met. That's ingrained in our brain. It is okay to have your automatic thought. That's who you are. It's also part of your personality. Are you a supporter or controller or whatever? The problem that happens, though, is once I get this ingrained in my head that I'm dealing with a bad person, I now create an emotion. And what do you feel when your automatic thought is that person's a jerk, or that person's a bad boy, or that kid is disrespectful? What do you feel? What do you feel? Yeah, thank you. You feel some anger. You feel defensive. And I'm going to tell you that your automatic thought marries your emotion pretty quickly. As soon as I go emotional and I become defensive, this is what drives my response. So the only thing I have control over is my response. No matter what is said to me, done in front of me, a kid does something to another kid. And this is where it gets us too. Sometimes we see a kid take on another kid and they really hurt their feelings. And our automatic thought is, what a terrible thing for that kid to have done. How hurtful. That kid is really hurtful. That kid's mean. That's my automatic thought. So I get upset and I get angry about that. And so I act on that. The only way I can control my response is to change my perception. I got to change my perception because there's one key thing in this equation I've got to keep out of the mix, and that's my emotion. So we've got to get that emotion out of there.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm thinking about my own kid. I feel like I've been in a power struggle for the last week or two with him, the 16-year-old. And again, even my husband's recognizing it. So he's like, oh my gosh, you all have to stop. So he's using the strategies that I've taught him to use over the years that he's now taken back to myself to say, you need to stop. You're trying to have the last word and it's not working. And I need to start looking at things differently because right now I know I'm going into a battle and I need to rethink why is he acting the way he is. So, hold on. Change your perception is huge. We need to view it as an opportunity to use one of the new strategies we're going to learn today. I'm not sure what happened to this. Maybe it got too big. I'll have to relook at that, but it did change the font on here. But we'll be thinking when they misbehave, instead of us getting angry and thinking it's a bad kid, we're going to say to ourselves, this is a new opportunity, a chance for me to use one of the new strategies that I'm going to learn today. Let's look at this really quick illustration just to deal with the classroom too. Mr. Edwards is a 6th grade teacher with a difficult class. Much of his day is spent trying to get students to comply with directions instead of focusing on valuable learning time. Common non-compliant conflicts in the classroom consist of students talking back, the refusal to even complete or start any work or follow those directions or assignments. And Mr. Edwards does not know what to do anymore. He's very frustrated. He's reaching for Advil or Excedrin migraine, maybe other things, who knows, but he's very stressed out with the kids not doing what he wants them to do. So we're going to look at a quick video, the 3 must-know signs of oppositional defiant. Now, one of the things that you need to know, most of your kids probably there that you serve probably have a diagnosis of ODD. If not, it's okay. You can use any of these strategies on any kid, whether they have the diagnosis or not. If you see them being non-compliant, you can use any of these strategies. Now, the important thing to know, Whenever you get these strategies, there is a continuum, okay? It's a huge continuum of mild, moderate to severe. So some of the strategies are for mild kids. And then some you'll go into the moderate, and then some are for severe. I will try to point out examples of that as I tell you the strategies, so that way you can be very mindful, because a lot of times they'll go, this won't work. He's so aggressive. Well, you're exactly right, because you're using a mild strategy for a severe kid. So keep that in mind. And if you get confused, you can always shoot me a quick email, but be very mindful of that as we go through. But we need to have a complete understanding of, we all become non-compliant at some points in our life. The difference being that some kids get stuck there. Okay, so this one video talks about 2 times. One, when a toddler, 2, a teenage, but there's a 3rd time too, and that is when your elderly parents get older, and they might start to show signs of not being able to do things on their own or any of that kind of stuff. They might become very non-compliant to you because they are losing control. So I just want to keep that in mind. That's part of another non-compliance training I do, that I really hit on those 3 areas, but we're going to hit on them very quickly today.
Welcome back, Straight Talkers. All children are oppositional from time to time, but how much is too much? And when is it considered to be a psychiatric disorder? Today, I'm going to talk about oppositional defiant disorder and provide 3 must-know signs and symptoms to watch out for. If your child is overtired, hungry, upset, or stressed out, odds are they'll likely be less cooperative and more oppositional that day. This is normal. Children like to show their autonomy. This often results in them trying to show you that you don't have any power or control over them. And these behaviors are to be expected. What we typically see over the years is an escalation of behaviors up to the age of 3, a temporary decline, and then another escalation in early adolescence. At some point in time, if you haven't already experienced it, your child will test limits and push your buttons. A police officer's son might vandalize property. A teacher's daughter might skip class. Or a child psychiatrist's son might give his mom the finger while in public. It happens to all of us, and it's beyond irritating, and in no way is it a parenting failure. However, there comes to a point where the spectrum of normal ends and behaviors become excessively disruptive. Oppositional behavior becomes problematic when it's so frequent and intense that it's beyond what would be expected out of kids of a similar age. In addition, it can start affecting various areas of your child's life, and we commonly see fallouts in one's social, academic, and family life. In clinic, a diagnosis that I will always screen for is oppositional defiant disorder, also known as ODD. This disorder has been placed in the chapter Disruptive Impulse Control and Conduct Disorders in the DSM. And these diagnoses are known to involve problems with self-control that negatively imposes on others. When making this diagnosis, psychiatrists will evaluate for a pattern of behavior that lasts more than 6 months, and there are 3 groups of symptoms to look out for. The first group of must-know symptoms fall under the category of angry or irritable mood, and this includes your child losing their temper, being touchy or easily annoyed, or being angry and resentful. Many times, this includes children who have a temperament that is described as being touchy, quick to react, and slow to calm down. They're often not aware that they're acting irrationally, yet they're also not able to control these urges. The second must-know symptoms fall under the category of argumentative and defiant behaviors. Children will externalize their problems and cause distress onto those that they are around. So things to look out for are them arguing with adults, defying rules or refusing to comply with requests, deliberately annoying other people, and blaming others for their mistakes or misbehaviors. Kids will make it their job to defeat adults and will be relentless in trying to prove others wrong. Their goal is to resist anyone's attempt to exercise any authority over them. Lastly, the third must-know symptoms fall under the category of vindictiveness. Some kids are so ruthless that they'll be vindictive or spiteful. Kids who act this way are often described by parents as being revengeful, malicious, and just plain mean. Unfortunately, when these symptoms are present, it's not uncommon for moms to break down crying in my office out of hurt and frustration. It is important to note that in ODD, all of these behaviors need to be exhibited with at least one person who is not a sibling. In addition, at least 4 of the 8 total behaviors need to be present in a 6-month period, and they need to be associated with some sort of distress in the individual's life or in the lives that they're around. Those behaviors that were once daily frustrations build up over time and damage the parent-child relationship. In addition, the behaviors lead children to be in constant trouble, whether it's with their family, teachers, or legal authorities. If your child is diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, your doctor might also mention that their condition is categorized as being mild, moderate, or severe. Mild means that symptoms are present in just one setting, such as only at home. Moderate means that symptoms are present in 2 settings, commonly being at home and school. Severe means that symptoms are present in more than 2 settings, such as home, school, and in the community. If you have any topics that you'd like to hear more about, put your ideas in the comment section. Otherwise, head on over to the next video to find out more ways that you can help your child live their best life.
All right. I really like that video. And again,
Welcome
I
back,
think
Street.
it's I love it when she says, and they experience it with other people other than their siblings. I have 2 boys. Obviously, they like to fight a little bit as they go through. But again, the minute the other one's not around, they're asking, where are they? So looking at noncompliance, and we look at that it happens when they're a toddler, again, in early adolescence. That can be anywhere from 9 years old to 13, depending on when they hit puberty as they go through. But also, addition is the elderly. So kind of keep that in mind and view that as an opportunity to try one of these new strategies. So what is what is student noncompliance? It's basically when a student refuses to follow any instructions and openly defies authority. The student noncompliance can occur anywhere, but mostly in the classroom where the teacher wants control and structure. It can also occur at home. But again, it looks different at home than it does in the classroom, because typically sometimes if a kid walks out of a room at home, it's not as disrespectful or defying authority as it is if a kid walks out of the classroom. Does that make sense? So kind of keep that in mind. Classroom teachers believe conflicts with defiant and non-compliant students are the main cause of overall classroom disruption. And that is true and holds true even in Kentucky with our Safe Schools report. In addition to that, it also, non-compliance not only has the most office referrals for classroom disruption, but it also typically leads to physical restraint. So, and it should not, but we'll talk about a kid who tries they might be mild, but again, we talk about that moderate to severe. Those kids, if they don't get the function met, whatever they're trying to get, they will end up pushing and going to the next level. So they may become aggressive with that. And so that's where that physical restraint might come in. It started with noncompliance, but we kept pushing and pushing and pushing and ended up in a battle. And then we end up in a restraint. So kind of keep that in mind as we go through. All right, the frequency of this behavior. Student noncompliance is a situation that most teachers dread. It's the source of frustration. And again, our response becomes emotional. We don't have control. We begin to lose our own control and we have an emotional response to them. But once today that you start to view it as a chance to try a new strategy, and you're going to have a whole folder full of resources, you're going to be able to use these. So you're going to be able to respond in a little bit more calm manner. So when discussing classroom management with colleagues, many teachers report that they believe conflicts with defiant and non-compliant students are their main cause of any disruption. And again, we know that. So we want to be able to use some different strategies, and we'll look at what not to use, what makes it worse, and then we'll look at what the research says to use. Take Mr. Edwards' class, for example. Every day he deals with the same students refusing to participate. So Mr. Edwards must take time out of his instruction to confront the negative behaviors, leaving the other students in the classroom restless or maybe not getting his attention and allowing time for them to be distracted. Not to mention the non-compliant students might be sent out and they're missing valuable instruction during that time. And everybody is losing. So being able to have these strategies will help. How we identify the problem. Teachers need to recognize non-compliance and that it seriously interferes with effective instruction. In addition, any compliance rates below 40% in school districts typically prevent a child from benefiting from their educational opportunities, from making progress. What's really important is to realize what the function is. So remember, I had you write down a kiddo, a person. It could be your significant other. It could be your own child. It could be a kid in your classroom, somebody who is non-compliant. I want you to think, why are they non-compliant? What are you seeing? So, last week we talked a little bit about what's the function. And typically misbehavior is occurring for a reason and it's working for a reason. They are getting something out of it. So are they attention seeking? Are they getting attention from you, from other classmates? As a reinforcer, okay? So think about that. Or are they trying to escape and avoid something? Are they trying to get out of work? Is it a skill deficit? What could it be? Do they need control? Why are they doing what they're doing? So take just about 30 seconds and write down your best guess, your best hypothesis of why is the person that you're dealing with acting the way they are. And we'll hit on more as we go through, but just quickly jot down, why do you think they're doing what they're doing? To get something or to avoid something? I'm going to give you a prime example. Remember, my 14-year-old has been diagnosed with dyslexia, ADHD, anxiety, a little bit of sensory. And his teacher, some of his behaviors in the classroom would mimic as a non-compliant student. The lack of maybe starting a task or completing a task. And we've talked a lot about perception. Well, we also have to talk about the student's perception. Remember, he has dyslexia and dysgraphia. And so depending on the work presented to him and if it is accommodated with his disability, if he receives a piece of paper with a lot of words on it, he could shut down, okay, automatically. All of a sudden, he raises his hand, I have a headache, I'm hungry, I need to go to the bathroom, any one of those things, but he's not going to start the test. So depending on how in tune the teacher is to realize that he is trying to escape and avoid, and it's based on a skill deficit. Now, this is where sometimes us as teachers get a little confused. The teacher could say, I know he can do this. He's just being non-compliant. But in his mind, his perception is this is a lot of words. Some words I may know, some words I may not know. I don't think I get this. Okay, so he automatically, his perception is he can't do it. So he's not going to, so he's going to escape and avoid. So even though the teacher thinks that he can do that, his perception is he can't. So once you realize that they are escaping and avoiding, and you realize what the function is, then you can go in, because when he starts to do that, that teacher can go in and say, do you need help? Do you need to ask a friend? Do you need a word bank? I mean, some different things like that in order, or wait 30 seconds before you go to the restroom, or let's do one problem, then go to the restroom. Any one of those things for that escape and avoidance. If that child can get that same need met, then you're not going to see as much noncompliance and or aggression and anger or any one of those things. So hopefully everybody has written down, why do you think this person is doing what they're doing? And sometimes some of it could be how they're raised. I hate to say that, but they could have a lot of arguing in their home, and they see it, so they also model it. Remember last week we watched the video, and we talked about, don't you dare yell at your, brother or sister while you're yelling at them too. So we tend to do that a lot, but let's look at some contributing factors. Dealing with noncompliance definitely gets us very, very frustrated. But what we need to look at is when other more mild forms of noncompliance become ineffective, and this is what I was talking about. If my child didn't get to escape by going to the bathroom, like they said, no, you've already used all of your passes. No, you sit here and you start that work now. He is going to eventually maybe try to up the ante at that point. Okay. So you have to keep that in mind, that if you don't intervene early enough and give them other resources, that you could have a tantrum, aggressive act, throw the book, cuss you out, any one of those things to be able to avoid and get out. So frequent noncompliance in children can often develop into more serious behaviors, including aggression. Also, one of the things with ODD is as they get older and they keep pushing that button because it's serving a function for them, that they could go into a conduct disorder, which is, instead of breaking rules, they're now breaking the law. Okay. So they start getting into more serious trouble. So it is very beneficial to intervene early and figure out what works. So obey me. We're going to watch Holly here.
We get caught up in wanting compliance. That's for power. I want compliance. I want it now. I want it now. This kid's going to do it. This kid's going to do it. And you're standing over the child. And that's how a lot of little kids end up in restraints, when they didn't need to end up in restraints. When I have a kid flip out on me in the hallway, face down, screaming, and I say, it's time to move to across to the hall, and they're like, "Bleh," and they're kicking and screaming, guess what I do? I take 2 steps back and get away from their legs, for one. I always say, always be a leg length away from a kid. Their legs are longer than their arms, all right? And if they get you, they'll get you with their legs first. So take that casual step back, get out of the way, and don't talk anymore. Don't talk. Just look the other way, whatever, do something, but stop engaging. The more we get into compliance mode, the more it's now about us, and the more we're just going to keep that power struggle going. It's the same thing as the kid who I said to him, I said, hey, go in class so you're not late. And he said to me, yeah, why don't you go to class and teach like you get paid to? And by the way, mind your own business. What are my feelings about that high school kid? Not very good. That kid, he could have been sentenced to jail for 20 years and I wouldn't have been happy at that moment. I wouldn't have been happy because I wanted compliance. So I had to step away from it at that moment. Did I deal with it another time? Sure did. But at that moment, I had to respond differently. So here we are. You're okay. You're pretty okay. You're feeling good about it. I call it the compliance meter because it's something we carry coins in our pockets. And I want you to think about this visual. When you feel the power struggle coming on, think about how many coins are you dropping into the meter? Once you drop one in, you're still in the green zone. You start pouring some more coins into that meter. What'd you say to me? You can't say that to me. What's your name? And he says, Bill Clinton. And you're like, oh yeah, don't be a wise guy. Oh yeah, well, you look like, and then whoop, before you know it, you're in town. Now my automatic thought starts pulling me in. So I start emptying my pockets into that meter. Oh yeah, you're going down, kid. You are going down. You're going down, mama. All right, you're going down. Then I want compliance now. And here's when we get into the red zone. Here's when it's hard to pull back. When you're in the yellow zone, you can still pull yourself back. You can still step back and say, you know what, why don't we have this conversation tomorrow? I can still say to the parent who's screaming at me on the phone, you know what, I really do appreciate what you have to say. Let me give you a call tomorrow and we'll continue this discussion. But if I let it get here, well, train's left the station. Hard to bring it back.
All right. So with that one, I think it is very true to look at the kid on the continuum, that mild, moderate to severe, that she talked about zones, and she talks about that yellow zone. That's that kid that's in that moderate, and we don't want to go into the red zone. So sometimes when we start to feel our emotions going up, that we need to just say, okay, how can I get out of this? Whether it's I'm on the phone with a parent, I'm in a meeting with somebody that I'm disagreeing, or with the kiddo. What can you say? So some phrases might be, let me get back to you. Let me check on that, to be able to give you some times. Or sometimes you can just say, I need a few minutes to model for them what they may need to do also. So keep that in mind as we're going through as another strategy. What not to do. Do not engage in the power struggle. And that you all, I keep saying this all day long. And this happened over COVID when I did a lot of trainings. And my kids were here. They were like, oh, mom, maybe, they listen all the time. Maybe you need to try this or do that with the other brother sometimes, but do not engage in power struggles. Right now, I need to go back and rethink this. For my oldest. Often we get involved in power struggles and we need to be able to say face. Now, how many of you, do you all have a somebody else that team teaches with you or a paraeducator in the classroom? If you do, this is when you really need to come up with a hand signal or a saying to tap each other in and out. Like when you get involved and you're going in for that power struggle, like I used to say to my husband, we heard you, cut. Instead, guess what he did to me this weekend? He was like, stop, we heard you. You don't need to have the last word. We're done. We're done with the conversation. So again, but it works much better if you can come up with a saving grace. Like you tap each other out. You just simply say, Ms. King, so-and-so needs to talk to you for a moment. I'll take over. So you leave with some respect and you just begin to realize that. Maybe coming up with some free phrases that will help. Avoid needing the last word. Sometimes that's tough. I'm going to give you an article that you can read. So when you have a tough day with them, that you can go back to see why is it important not to have the last word and what the research says. Stay away from sarcasm. This is always very, very true. Kids don't like it. They don't like to be embarrassed in front of their peers. And so definitely just stay away from that. You can use it on yourself, just not them. So what does work? An escalating kid. We're going to quickly listen to Polly just a little bit more here.
When a child escalates, stop talking. There's a novel idea. This is management. When they start escalating, shut it down. The more you talk, the more they're coming back at you. The more that you respond to their, I love this one. Child, he's telling him to sit down. This is a perfect example. I've seen this happen. Sit in this chair.
This is prime.
Kid goes like this. And then you explode, right? Because you wanted them to sit over there. You ever get that chippy kid and says,
Okay, and I am gonna give you a resource that talks about this, the kid who finds the loophole and exactly what you're saying. This happened to me as a middle school EBD self-contained teacher all the time, especially at the alternative school that I taught at. I'd say, take your hat off. They take their hat off and put it right back on. So again, those are the kiddos that actually on that continuum would be considered that moderate to severe because they are so smart in it. So we'll watch just a little bit more.
Well, you said sit in this chair. You didn't say where. And you just want to strangle him. At that point, what would you do? He's playing me. He's playing me like, yeah, he's playing me like the entire band. At that point, I'm not going to say anything. It's going to sound really weird, but I'm not going to say anything because he's sitting there and he's doing this, going, I'm going to do my best to pick myself up by the bootstraps, say nothing, and I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to help you and I'm going to help you and I'm going to help you. Oh, I'm going to get to him, hands down, but it's all about timing. If I say something at that moment, like I meant over there, move the chair over there. Oh, move the chair over there. Okay. Hey, everybody. And then they take the chair and do this. Boom. And now you're on fire. Sometimes we got to remember that we light ourselves up when we don't necessarily have to. So at this point, I'm going to let them keep that upper hand until I have the opportunity to reel them in. So if the bell rings, if it's an older child or it's the end of it's a normal transition, we're going to art, whatever, that's when I'm reeling you in. It's all about timing. So they're on their way out the door. I'm like, whoa, hold on. You and I need to chat. And I always find that when I pull that kid aside one-on-one and chat with them, I actually get a lot better response than if I started the argument in the middle of the class. Sometimes I'll say to him on the way out the door, I'll say, hey, you know what, Michael, that was not okay what you did. We really do need to talk about this. And we'll talk about that tomorrow at this time, which is sometimes 2:15, which is sometimes during their free time, which is sometimes whatever. I'll take away their time. I find that whenever I want to address a child, I want to address them on their time because that's a consequence. If the behavior escalates, then I walk over and I have a script in my mind. If I manage this kid by not saying anything, chances are they're going to be like, they don't like that. They don't like that at all because their sole purpose is to disrupt that class. So they escalated on me. At that point, I will turn around and I'll say 2 words, stop immediately. If they stop, I'm good. If they don't, that's when I have to utilize resources. But kids need to know at every moment when I'm going to utilize a resource, they know the resource is going to happen. They know that they're going to go wherever the person is going to show up. Whatever it might be, it has to happen every single time. I had a little one who trashed the classroom for a while, and teacher was really good about if the kid took all their books and threw them on the floor. Teacher was really good about saying, managing it and just kind of going and pulling all the other kids together. But then the kid would escalate it and start pulling books off the shelf, pulling the bulletin board apart. And at that point, it was a stop immediately. And if the child continued, a call was made, a very quick call was made. It said, we got a 22 and a 5, whatever. And someone came, escorted the child out, and they sat in a desk with no entertainment, with no coloring books, no materials, no nothing. And they spent a good amount of the rest of that time on that day sitting there because they had to realize that was not okay. And then when we put the classroom together, picked everything up, we left a section of that for that child to clean up. When the child came back to the class the next day, that was their job. Before you go out to recess, this is the stuff that has to be cleaned up, or later that day, depending on.
Okay, so she does a really good job in explaining how to respond. And a lot of times, even though you don't respond immediately, just saying to them during their time, I need to speak with you, during class change, during lunch, close to, dismissal, any one of those times, is very beneficial. And typically you get more bang for your buck meeting with them one-on-one. And most of these kids are also, very strong, leadership qualities, that we need to kind of view behavior differently. And a lot of times we might need them to be a leader, and this might be the time that you talk to them, instead of leading the class in the, you know, disruption, that I need you as a leader to get the other. And I've used that one before. I used it at my alternative school, for, a kiddo, and it really worked every single time, that I brought them on board for the whole class. It really, was a good strategy. We're not going to watch this video based on time because I want to get to more strategies here, but you will be able to access this, in the PowerPoint and handout on how to stay in control. But I'll give you the strategies that we go. Well, this one's only a minute, so I'll quickly let it play out for just a second.
We said last time, depending upon the age of the student, if I say to the child, go ahead and sit down, and he says no, I will turn around and give him kind of that cue where I'll say, go ahead and take your seat, and I'll be right back to check on you. And I'm going to walk away from him at that moment because I know he's safe, and he's just he's looking for what? He's looking to see. And how hard is it not to get into that, though, having shared that? Very hard. Right. What can I do that will lead to success for him? What can I do to make him follow the direction? Now, my guess is this is a youngster who doesn't follow directions on a regular basis anyway. So it could have been, okay, you pack your things and we're going to Disney. No. All right. That's the kind of kid, that defiant kid, no matter what you say. So how we work with them is going to be as little words as possible, little nonverbal cues, things that we'll talk about a little later to get the kid to just have a little control. What that kid wants more than anything is control over the situation. But then we want control too, because we want more than anything for other people to see what? That we're in control. And we are in control. And you've heard me say this before. We are in control when we give a kid a redirection and then we turn to something else. Because we're not picking the fight.
Okay, so with that one being said, not picking that fight and walking away, that is huge. And also if you're reinforcing other kiddos when you go through, for being on task, for having their book open, doing whatever, that is huge. But for non-compliant kids, one of the things, proximity control. What we as teachers typically have been trained is bring that kid closer to you. Well, with the non-compliant kid, that backfires. They get more non-compliant. So that non-compliant kiddo really needs to sit furthest away from the teacher's desk as much as possible, in order to get compliance. Also, when you walk away, that gives them time to be in control and get back on task of whatever you ask. Now, we're on that continuum for mild, moderate, and severe. Some kids will respond very well and do that. Others, there still might be a little bit of lag time. But with that being said, that real severe kiddo, they're going to wait till the very last minute, maybe right before you come back up, and we'll look at that over what you can do. They're just waiting for you to come back and to engage again. So if you can go through and reinforce. The other thing with them, the more severe non-compliance they are, all of the positive stuff that we talk about sometimes comes back and backfires on us. So you have to be very mindful of that. The minute that you come back around and he's opened up your book, okay, he's followed your direction, he's on page 18 that you had asked him to be on, and you say, thank you very much, or here's 2 points, or here's a token, whatever your system is, the minute you say that out loud, he closes the book and stops. immediately because he can't take the positive reinforcement. Okay. So you have to be very mindful. He might be able to take a quick post-it note, and you can already have these printed up, whatever, that says, thanks, good job. And you don't say anything, you just lay it down. I have to tell a really quick story. She said about a little one, but this was one year I was working for Fayette County. I got called out to a Head Start preschool classroom, and the little boy was being restrained a lot. They also said that he would get naked, like stripped down, when he got aggressive. And so they called me in, and I go into this classroom, and they have a preschool teacher and 2 assistants, and it's packed. This little boy had a disability. He had ODD, ADHD. He was on the spectrum, sensory issues, you name it. And I sit here and I observe the classroom, and I watch circle time, and I watch centers. And then at one point in centers, I'm sitting back and I think, oh, I know what's wrong. You know, they're not giving him enough positive reinforcement. And so at one time he ends up in the kitchen, which was his favorite area. And so I go over there, and at one point they told me he liked stickers or something. So I go over and I give him a sticker because he's over there by himself, but nobody else is in that center. And I walk on by, and all of a sudden I try to do a drive-by. I notice pots and pans flying over my head against my back. He did not like me telling him or giving him a sticker at the time, telling him that he was doing a good job in the center time or whatever. So that started the pots flying, which started after that when the teachers confront him over throwing the pots. The shoes came off being thrown. After the shoes came off, the belt came off. After the belt came off, the shirt came off, the pants came down. So we end up, and I get to see him almost fully down to his underwear, basically, and also being restrained. And at that point, I was like, oh my goodness. So we had to relook at some things, and I watched a little bit more and worked with him. And so the next time I went through, and they were like, he does like the stickers. And I was like, okay, maybe it was my verbal. So I think it was a day later or something. He goes back to the kitchen, which was his favorite. And I just take the sticker and I go and I stick it on his shirt. Okay. Like right here or on his hand. I can't remember. This was probably 25 years ago. But I go and I do that, and I start to walk on by, and I'm waiting for the pots to go and everything else. And there were no pots flying this time. So what it told me is he was able to take a little bit of positive, but it had to be quiet. It couldn't be verbal, and do the reinforcement. But these kids like to sabotage. The minute they hear the positive, they act up and have an episode typically right after. Most of these kids too are very, very bright kids. Some of them are gifted. Okay. And they're manipulative, and they know what's going on and what they need to do. So keep all of that in mind. Again, there's always a continuum, but let's look at what the research says. So research shows that there are distinct positive correlations between a well-managed classroom and higher levels of academic achievement. It's important that students are compliant to their instructors' directions. So we don't have that wasted time, because I think I showed you the beginning and ending routines. If we waste a lot of classroom time, that equals into days, even though it's only minutes in the time. But if you add it up, it becomes a lot of time, which becomes like 17 days of missed instruction, just by losing 5 minutes per hour of instruction. Several strategies for dealing with noncompliance have been very effective. And here is one of them, and this is called the defensive management. It's a method designed to help teachers better manage noncompliance. And it has a 6-step process, and we're just going to quickly look at the steps. here. One is preparation. This is just you and or a colleague to come in and to observe and record. This is where you're looking at that function of behavior. When do you see it occurring? Every time before you give an independent assignment, every time that they do reading, every time they do math, anytime. It doesn't matter what subject it is. When do you see this occurring? The no. And, you know, I've done a lot of behavior consults over the year, and like one kiddo I'm thinking of in particular, anytime he would go, no, we knew what was coming next. So our job was to intervene the right after he said no, as much as possible. Another thing we saw with this kiddo, he did some type of tapping or a physical prompt after he would say no. I know what it was. He moved away and said no. So he would start off with a verbal no. And if that wasn't good enough, then he went to pushing behind the table. Then he went into a full physical tantrum, which was a physical aggression that ended up in a restraint. So us being able to recognize what starts first and being able to intervene. Positive contact. The teacher plans to make positive contact. Remember, Polly had mentioned about the coins and making those deposits. They are still big, even non-contingent ones, just by saying good morning, how are you, thanks for this. Any one of those things, all are those positive things that we have to put into our bank account. If not, we're going to be in the hole, in the red, and we don't want to be there. Warning signs. The teacher is attentive and is aware of those warning signs based on that observation of when this occurs. Just like I said, the kid would go no. And if we didn't intervene after the no, then we're going to get a push away and a no. And then we're going to get the kicking or the shoes coming off. So there's typically a pattern to it. We just need to be aware of those warning signs. The emotional control. You're going to have better emotional control when you know what to expect, when you start to see this. But you also start to look at your own physical. Does your heart rate start to go up? Does your face start to get red? Do you get red and splotchy? Do you start kicking your leg? What do you start doing? So real quickly, just in the chat, just put in, what are your own emotional responses typically when somebody starts to push your buttons? I get hot, yes. Oh, I gotta put on my glasses. Heart rate goes up, yes, definitely. Just being able to recognize that is huge. And also being able to say, I need just a moment, or we're going to talk about this in a little bit. Okay. Enough time for you to calm down. You can even model and say, I need to take a break. I need to get my own self-control. Okay. Somebody says, yeah, sometimes I feel like I can tear up. It just depends on that emotion. Which one? So step number 5 is diffuse. Here, the teacher responds to the negative behavior designed to de-escalate. So hearing the student out, that's called active listening. This is huge. I worked with a family that had a single mom. Actually, she was in an abusive relationship. Not sure if they were actually married or not, but the dad eventually was abusive to her and the boys. But he eventually died in a car accident but she had 3 boys. They were all gifted, ADHD, ODD. And one of the boys had to have active listening, hearing the student out. So active listening is one of the strategies. That's just setting the timer, giving the kid 5 minutes to plead his case. They always say non-compliant kids could be good lawyers. They plead their case all the time. This is one of the strategies. It de-escalates them. We'll talk about this more next week in the de-escalation part, about active listening, de-escalation. But this is a strategy. Set the timer, 3 minutes. You don't have to agree with anything they say. They just say it. Okay, so you teach them, I'm gonna hear you, I'm gonna set the timer for this amount, and you can say whatever you need to say. So that's that active listening. Acknowledging, yeah, I would be very upset too. No, I can't imagine. So, just acknowledging their feelings, speaking calmly. We all know those people who have that calming effect on us, that calm us down. We utilize them in our everyday life. And so the kids need to be able to recognize who those are. Avoiding power struggles. So not having the last word, we'll look at a few resources as that. And then number 5, number 6, that's a misprint. Number 6 is reconnect. Come back to them, and after the consequence, after the whole incident, and you just initiate some type of positive thing. I expect to see you in here tomorrow, or thank you for bringing it back around. I also do trainings on the PASS program, and one of the things that I like about it is that it always gave the kid a quicker opportunity to save face and get back into the game, back into the classroom, as compared to the typical EBD self-contained leveling system, which they messed up, they got sent out for so many days or hours or whatever it could be. That the PASS program was, yeah, you messed up. Yes, you need to de-escalate, but we're going to come back in here, and I want to see you being able to utilize your own strategy. So reconnect with the student is huge. So their perception is good. Here's another quick strategy, the the request, the sequence. So probability. What you do here is you go through and you ask them to do easy stuff, basically. Can you turn on the light? Can you set up the PowerPoint for me? Can you get pencils? Things that you know that they're going to do. And then say, can you open to page 18? Or can you start your task? Okay, so you're going to have at least 3 preferred activities that you ask them to do. And then you're going to ask the non-preferred one after that. And you have more of a higher chance to get them to comply. Also, another strategy here for you as teachers, if you say thank you, you also get more of a chance of them complying. Another one is if you change the way that you say things, instead of saying, I need you to turn to page 18, join me on page 18. That always works. So that's another teaching strategy. So this high request sequence is really, really big. Also, it depends on the cognitive level. If you have a kid who's much more low cognitive, you could easily do some more physical requests, like touch your head, stand up, sit down, you know, those type of things. So kind of keep that in mind over the cognitive level. But the main thing is that you ask for 3 easy requests that you know they're going to do, and then do the non-preferred. Okay, what else does the research says? Effective commands. Commands that are directly stated. I like to do, this is in one of the other trainings that's all day, but write down command A and command B. Real quick, command A commands are the A+. So put a plus by it, and it's what we want you to do, okay? So it's very clear. You must do your homework in order to go outside. You must do this to do this. Very simple and direct. The other command, command B, is what you really think it is. It's nagging, it's to worry, and you're being a bee. So that's how I like to kind of, you know, I'm thinking back to myself currently at home, so I'm trying to do some self-reflection. maybe I've been giving too many B commands, and nagging to my 16-year-old. I may try to switch it up to some A commands, and see how that works for myself, because the B commands are only getting us more into power struggles. And what I also like to call the B commands is like just getting on your soapbox, just going on and on and on. And they tune you out. So you don't want to be a B. So we want not to do those commands. Again, the results of the study supported that giving more effective commands to increase compliance, that definitely works. Real quick,
I'm
here's,
Polly Bath and I travel.
we're not going to watch this for time on the perception. Maybe, maybe not. I'll just tell you what it is. Okay, she talks about just shifting gears and to change our perception. You'll be able to access the video if you want, but I want to quickly point out what's in your resource. This is called the stop, pause, count to 10, take a couple of deep breaths, think about the behavior, and then process, change your perception. Why are they doing this? Is it to get attention? Is it to escape and avoid? Why are they doing what they're doing? So shift those gears. It's called the STP. You can see it more into that one video. What you can do, the ways to handle noncompliance in your classroom: be firm in your directions. I need you to sit. This is the area, really quick, that just tells you that's for the mild. For moderate, you may say, actually, I like it better this way, to be honest. For mild, you would say, I need you to sit in your seat, please. No, you're going to say, join me on page 18. For moderate, you're going to say, I need you to join me on page 18. And then for severe, you might change it to a question to say, what page do you need to be on? And they're going to answer 18 because they always want to be right. Just to let you know, make a request really clear. Use that high request of preferred activities. Remember to stop, that they don't have to have the last word. And try not to take it personal. There's additional online resources. I'm going to quickly show you what is in your folder. In your folder, this is the article that I love. It was published from CEC many years ago, probably almost 30 years ago. But I have used it that long. This article explains why you don't need to have the last word. What does the research say? Proximity control, why you don't need that. Any one of those things as you go through, it gives you the reason. Remember, we talked earlier about the loopholes and that kid being able to find it. It talks about that in there. Non-compliant, if you need a quick, fast, easy thing. Interventions for non-compliant: indirect, giving walk-bys, whispering positive praise, leaving a post-it note, any one of those things. Direct intervention: planned ignoring. You can plan ignore, but if you know this kid will push it and take it to the next level, we don't want to do that for kids who get that we know are physically aggressive, and will do that. So you have to be mindful. Deferring control. This one's a big one, and we didn't mention it in here, but the rule is, what you want to say, the kid goes, I don't want to do this, or I'm not going to this class, or whatever it may be. You say the schedule is, your schedule is, the clock says it is, and then you go, and they typically don't argue with that type of thing. Replacement behavior for releasing anger, especially if the kid's really aggressive. The kiddo who's always questioning and asking why, those are big. The other thing, gain compliance by adding to rather than taking away is huge. I use this all the time for middle school and high school kids. Increase work production. Again, it can be a ticket system. You can change the colors on it. It still works for middle and high school. You can change those out if you need to. Here's a couple more resources for noncompliance. There are QR codes and also links on here for this, and then some reflection questions as you go through. In addition, I believe you have a couple more resources for generic classroom management for noncompliance as a whole. And then I think you had a tier 3 for more interventions that was listed in there too. And I think that covers it all that is in your folder. Any questions over noncompliance? And I did much better on time this time.
I think that's great. We could have you talking about this for, well, like you said, a full day. It looks like there's a question.
Oh. Okay, gets defiant so they can use, can you tell me what your thoughts as an image? Okay, Mike, can you unmute and just kind of give me an example a little bit clearer?
Hello?
Okay, hello.
I just want to make sure you guys can hear me correct.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, I may have a student that is naturally like ODD or defiant, that he maybe show a tendency of being disrespectful to some of our female teachers. And what happens is sometimes our female teachers end up, I know you don't want to escalate a situation, but they want to teach him lessons. And as he gets defiant, they don't necessarily de-escalate it, but then after it's over, they have struggle with what was said to them, but also uses it as it wants me to teach him how to handle those situations in the future. I know it sounds kind of awkward or difficult to explain, but it does create a little bit of morale issues sometimes as a leader.
Okay, what I would definitely do, and actually I feel like it's currently going on with my husband, my oldest male,
Right.
at home. And this has been our last 2 weeks, to be real honest. I'm like, you're not going to speak to me that way. This is unacceptable. I mean, I'm in a battle with him right this second, but what I'm
Right.
having to do is do a little self-reflection. And what we probably need to talk to her about is, okay, let's look at a couple of these strategies. Let's go through and look at it. Have her either watch this, go on here, come up with some ideas. We're all human. We get sucked into it, and
Sure.
we all want the best for the kids and for us and the respect. I mean, there's
Right.
no doubt about it, but it's not good. It's not turning out well. So we have to do things a little differently. So what I'm doing today is I've been very mindful. I'm going to go
Okay.
back in and rework some of my commands. I'm not going to do the nagging commands. I'm going to be much more, command A. I'm going to be, pull him aside. I'm not going to do it in front of my husband or my other child. I'm going to talk to him about, okay, listen, you and I have not been, jiving here lately. We're going to come up with a better way, but
Right.
it's very disrespectful to me. And I'm not going to have you be disrespectful to me or to anyone else. So this is what I expect. And we're going to go through it that way. I'm going to have to also make some deposits. I think my deposits are off. I think I've been withdrawing a lot. I've been on him, a lot more than I probably should have, but it's because I have a high expectations. But it's off. So my ratio of interactions are off too.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is I would have a conversation with her and be like, let's talk about this. What can we do differently for these kiddos? I agree. They don't need to be disrespectful to you, but I could ask the exact same question that my husband asked. I get a smart aleck response and he gets a good response. And I'm like,
Right.
yep, that's not gonna happen. And so having to teach that, but also I had a conversation with my husband, I need your support too. And so he has said, and he made the comment last night, nope, what you just said and how you responded to your mom, there was attitude. That needs to change. So I think letting her know that you're gonna support her, that no, they're not gonna be disrespectful, but we also aren't gonna go into these battles, these power struggles and make things worse. So what strategy are we gonna try to utilize out of all of these? What do we think might be better? How can we still teach the same lesson over you're not gonna be disrespectful to women if it's women? How to be able to handle that. Does that help at all? And what I'm saying, did I even address
Oh,
what you
no.
were actually questioning? I think how I understood it was that the kiddos being disrespectful and it's being from.
Yeah, you nailed it. No, it was great. I think it's really important, especially the latter part of what your answer was exactly what my plan was. And I think just needed reinsurance with that. So I appreciate that.
Okay, good. And it happens because they're in the stage. I mean, it's not that the kid's a bad kid, my kid or this kid, and it also could depend on what they see in their home environment, or what's happened to them in the past,
Right.
or just where they are. They're not obviously a toddler, but they're in the adolescent stage or the elderly. So they're wanting control. They feel like they can have control at that or disrespectful. So again, all of that is just being able to address it in a calm manner. So self-reflection is huge. And there are some self-reflection questions that can help guide both ways there.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions? I do love working with non-compliance kids, and I do encourage you to view it as like an FBI profiler, to just be able to try these strategies and see the results, and then go in and tweak it just a little bit and see how how people respond to it. But they definitely work. But always, if you like 2 weeks from now, you have a really bad day, or 3 days from now, go back in and reread this. I've shared this article even with some parents and other, obviously, colleagues of teachers and or administrators on why is it important for us not to have the last word. Instead, we're going to use a command A, and then we're going to wait. And then if they don't do it, guess what? All we have to say back to them is, what do you need to do in order to go outside or to get free time that they keep asking? So again, these strategies 100% work. I've used them all the way from a 2-year-old all the way up to an adult. So any other questions? And then we'll talk next week about when it gets violent or they get really aggressive and angry, about the de-escalation part. So we'll talk more about that next week.
Okay, everybody, thank you so much for your time, especially you, Karen, and you busy teachers and administrators. I know it's not easy to take the time out, and we really appreciate it. I put the evaluation link in the chat, and you can just click that, and certificate should be automatically sent to you. And if it's not, just let me know. And I hope that we see you all back next week on Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
Yes.
We had to switch to Wednesday this week, but we'll be back to Tuesday next week. So thank you all for joining us and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.